in San Francisco, just as we could have an adverb, Bill walked slowly, or Bill bought a cat. And in the same way, a verb can take something else. It can take a whole sentence. And so, for example, you can say, Sue said, and then that Bill lied. And in this case, if you think about it, Bill lied is a whole sentence in itself. Bill is a subject and lied is a verb. Now, in all of these cases, we say that a verb takes complements. There are different kinds of complements. There's an object complement, there's a prepositional phrase complement, you can have an adverbial complement, or you can have this kind of sentential complement. And the way that you treat a sentence where there's a sentential complement is to append to the VP what is called a complement phrase. And that's how you handle things like Sue said that Bill lied. So this is how we handle a subordinate clause. And if you think about it, there might be a question as to where you would put the that in Sue said that Bill lied, because Bill is our subject, our first MP, and lied is our verb, our first VP. And the way we handle this is that the CP branches, and so you have first a C node, and that stands for complementizer. Don't worry why, but that is considered a complementizer. That's the terminology that's used. And so we hang our that there. And then Bill lied is a sentence, and so we have a whole new S node. And so the complement phrase, the CP, branches into a C, where you hang your complementizer. And then you've got a whole new sentence within a sentence. So that's how the CP, the complement phrase, works. Now this finally brings us back to the man who is tall is sad, and how human beings seem to know so intuitively how to make it into a question, despite the fact that there are actually two auxiliaries. Now the idea is that in the man who is tall is sad, who is tall, as you might know, is what's termed a relative clause. That is handled as a sentence within a sentence, so to speak, just like that Bill lied and Sue said that Bill lied. Now, we append it in the same way here, only this time we do it on the subject NP. And so it's a matter of the man, and then who is tall is appended, and then is sad is our VP, and that's separate, and that's over here. Now, in who is tall, who is actually the subject, if you think about it, and we have is as the auxiliary, and that means that in this case, the C node hangs empty. And we're going to see more of that kind of thing in the way syntax works in a subsequent lecture, but that's just a hint that this is not just the parsing that you may have learned in school. This is a different kind of formalism. The C is going to hang empty. So what we see here is that we don't have to make a clumsy stipulation that a child learns that in sentences with relative clauses that you have to pick the second aux when you're making it into a question. Obviously, that's not what goes on. Rather, this tree structure shows that the way that a human being might go at it is to think that what you do the inversion with is the highest auxiliary. The idea is that one of the auxiliaries is more prominent than the other and seems more central, even if there happen to be two or even three, and even if it comes second in the sentence. So it's not about counting, it's not about memorizing anything, but it's about being sensitive to this structure. And under the Chomskyan conception, a child would hear first a sentence like, "Is the man sad?" and know on a certain level, literally be genetically programmed to readily understand, although not being able to put it in so many words, that there are possible sentences within sentences, that this hierarchical structure is the way that language is actually built. Even if, for example, in a simple sentence that they hear, the embedded sentence, so to speak, is full of empty nodes like that hanging complementizer that we saw. So the child will hear that second auxiliary in the man who is tall is sad as higher, even though the child has not been told this. Certainly nobody would tell a child anything like this. But the idea is that we are programmed for syntax, which is organized according to the principles that we've seen in this lecture. So the Chomskyan revolution was to study syntax as something autonomous from, in particular, meaning and semantics, and to propose that there is an innate capacity for learning and processing and producing syntax of a particular kind that is universal to our species. His idea was that this is explained partly by the fact that there are mistakes that children do not make. So they will say "heat," but not "is the man who tall is sad." And clearly, these are things that beg some kind of explanation. The important part is that this is not just a matter of the sentence parsing that some of you may have learned in school. So this is the formalism, but the formalism differs from what you learned as parsing in many ways, as you've seen. And in the next two lectures, we're going to see that with this formalism, Chomsky and the gang have taken the study of syntax far beyond anything that anybody would have been taught in elementary or middle school. So in this lecture, what I want to present is just the basic tools as well as the history that we saw. And now we're going to play with those tools in the next two lectures. And we're going to look at some of the insights on human language capacity that linguists have discovered in